Hi there. Welcome to the hÉireann podcast with me, Ciara Riordan, the podcast that celebrates Irish women at home and abroad. We will hear their defining moments, what hÉireann and being an Irish woman means to them. We find out their favourite Irish saying, and we would even find out if they prefer Barry's tea or Lyons tea towards the end of the podcast. If you could be so kind to give the podcast a follow, a like, a comment, or even a review, that would be amazing. Your interaction will give the podcast a boost, and hopefully more people will hear our amazing stories. Oh, and if you have any guest recommendations of inspiring Irish women you know and love, either living in Ireland or elsewhere, please let me know. Now, on to this week's guest. She is an accomplished digital director and powerhouse in the Irish media landscape. She serves as the digital director at Onic, overseeing digital strategy and growth for 7 Onic radio stations, the Onic Originals podcast network, and talkSPORT Ireland. I want to put that in context for you. So the 7 primary radio stations within the Onic network that she oversees as digital director are FM 104, Dublin's Q102, Cork's 96 FM. I was on that recently talking about the hÉireann podcast with PJ Coogan. C103, Live 95, LMFM, and U105 based in Belfast, which serves Northern Ireland. So massive, massive job. Not only that, she is also an accomplished writer, having written for The Guardian, The Irish Independent, Rolling Stone, and much more. Passionate about building digital communities, Sasha is also founder of the Mamas Working 9 to 5 and Beyond, an online group supporting women balancing work and home life. And she's also the former co-host of the Grief Encounters podcast. Born in America to Irish parents, my next guest lives in Kildare. Sasha Hamrogue, welcome to the hÉireann podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here and so excited to see you again, Ciara.
I know. So we met in London at a Facebook event because both of us work in the digital space. We just clicked, and then I found out that and then we clicked
Did the red hair not give it away, Ciara? Did the bright red hair not give it away? No.
Not at all. Not at all. Like, these were cool accents. I was like, what? Yeah, and then we had great chats just about being women in the workplace and digital media space and stuff like that, which is great, always great, to connect. And then we obviously follow each other in social media, so now we think we know each other.
Best friends for life. So you're stuck with me, Ciara. This is it. No, but it is so great. And I think, we're going to talk obviously about what's wonderful about Irish women, but I think the way we connect and the chemistry that is between us when we start getting talking, and you might not have known the woman the day before, an hour before, and suddenly you're telling her, the most intimate secrets of your life, and you're so safely able to do so. It's something special, very special.
It is. Nicely put. Okay, so the basis of this podcast is 3 defining moments. So, Sasha, will you tell us your first defining moment?
Sure. So I don't think, I think there will be other women that have and will go on to probably have a similar first defining moment. Mine aren't in chronological order. I'm going to point that out before I start. But the birth of my children. I mean, I think becoming a mother is so life-changing, and it's not even life-changing. It feels like an understatement. It's soul morphing. It's your body changes, your soul changes, your heart changes, your mind changes in the most wonderful ways. But really, I mean, I think the most radical change about becoming a mother is you're no longer the most important person in your life. Suddenly the baby that is in front of you becomes everything, and that's a really humbling and cathartic and exhilarating and painful experience in so many different ways, because you realize, and I always talk about the birth of my daughter, my firstborn. I'd never felt so much purpose. So I think purpose came into my life the day she arrived in 2017, and I wasn't prepared. I'm not sure anyone is. But suddenly there was this beautiful baby girl in my arms, and I felt purpose, probably really clear, defined purpose for the first time in my life. Every day you're learning new techniques, new, just every part of it, all the caretaking, changing a nappy, breastfeeding, bottle feeding, how to get them to sleep, how to burp them, how to keep them asleep, you know, do they like buggies or cart? Will they sleep in the car? Should you have a carrier? And, it's so much coming in at your brain while you're vulnerable. And yet we do it. We're incredible. It's just incredible to watch a woman do this. It's amazing.
We are incredible, and that's what I thought as well after having my son. I was like, firstly, I think women are at their most vulnerable. Well, not all
A
women,
lot,
but
yeah.
a lot of women. And that's why society needs
Yeah.
to look after the women, you know, um, because your hormones and your emotions and are all over the place. Um, and the other thing I wanted to say was that that's what I thought. Like, I wanted to put on my LinkedIn, and I do think some people put it in there now, but I wanted to put on my LinkedIn saying, you know, 24-hour
Yeah.
mother, breastfeeding through the night, can still do everything else while being completely sleep deprived, and like, just to kind of say, like, we're all selling ourselves on LinkedIn, but, like, you know the amount of, like, work you do when you are a mother. And I don't know, I before I had my son, I didn't get it,
I couldn't agree with you more, Ciara. I think we don't talk about that. And I think as Irish women, we're almost afraid to own it, like, because it almost feels boastful sometimes to say, actually, I am doing it all. And when we say it all, it is what it all actually encompasses is enormous. I mean, you mentioned breastfeeding through the night. I breastfed both my babies 3 years total, so 18 months each. I'm hugely proud of that. But I was working and feeding through the night and getting up and going. And at the time, I didn't even have the words to kind of explain how I was getting by. But when a lot of us, when we come home from work, we close the door and our real job starts. And it's something else. It is really something that we're able for it.
yeah, we're mighty women, Sasha. Okay, so
Yeah.
thank you for that. Now on to second defining.
Sure. So we're going on the extremes here. We're going from birth all the way over to the other side, which again, I'm sure, and I know from listening to a few of your episodes that it does come up. But death, another thing that changes everything, and changes your life. So my dad was from Leitrim. My mother was from Tipperary, and they raised us in America. But we spent a lot of time here, obviously, until I moved here when I was 18 back here. But my dad got sick with cancer in 2009. Kind of earlier than that, but 2009 was when he got really sick, and he was working for an Irish airline in London at the time, but he was living in Ireland. He was just sort of based in London for a period of time. So I kind of had, I did what I'm always very proud of doing, which was dropped everything, and came to be with him. And I managed to get him home to Ireland. My sister and I worked tirelessly to try and get him back home so he could be near his family and we could have our support network. And so we got him back to Ireland, which was very meaningful for him and for us. And we got him into the hospice in Harold's Cross, and he lived there for about 3 months before he passed away in 2010. And I think it was about a year of caretaking. I left my job for the time. I was working at MTV in New York at the time, and there's another story in that they were so wonderful to me to allow me to do so. But I think becoming a caretaker is also life-changing in its purpose. I every day knew the task at hand was to make sure he was as comfortable as he could be. And that wasn't always easy. It was an incredibly stressful time. I had no skills, no toolkit whatsoever, and the roles had switched. So I was the daughter, and he was my dad, and he always took care of things, and he needed to be taken care of. So I always think in some ways it feels like I had a speedometer, like a car, and it broke during that time. I could never really tell after that how fast I was going, if that makes sense. I kind of, yeah, the stress was, just keeping somebody alive and making sure that they had what they needed. But in the end, he died in the most beautiful place he could have, with the care of the most incredible people in the Irish hospice, who I do a lot of fundraising for to this day. I just finished a challenge, a 100 Miles in March challenge that I did for them to raise money, because they're very dear to me. And after that, I suppose my sister and I we became kind of very worried that we might lose our mom. Naturally, I guess that gets in when you don't know about death, and then suddenly you do. It's mortality and everything comes into focus. And sadly, she got lung cancer. He died of lung cancer. She actually got lung cancer 5 years later, and she passed quite quickly. So she died within 6 weeks. Again, very lucky to have been by her side. My sister and I were with her when she died as well. So it would be very hard not to say that those, especially because of the nature of how close they were, but also living in a world without your parents is different. It is different. There is a line in the sand, the before and the after. And I think I would be doing a disservice to the grief community to say that that's easy, because it's very hard. And there's less like emotional support. They have never met my kids. There are people missing at the table. There are people missing at the birthday parties. So it makes things bittersweet. It would be also remiss of me not to say that it hasn't made me incredibly strong, because it has. And there's no doubt about that. Resilience, huge amount of resiliency that I maybe didn't have before. And I understand that life is short.
Yeah, so you're
I'm not letting it pass. No way, Jose.
I'm sorry to hear about your parents. And did your mum
No, she was in America. Her brothers and sisters. So my mother came from a family of 14 kids in Tipperary. So a good few of them managed to get over and see her. She would have loved nothing more than to have been home. But because it was so fast that she passed, 6 weeks, there was not really anything that we could have done about that. But when I say she yearned for Ireland, I mean, my mother was Angela Kelly from Ballina, County Tipperary. If anyone ever loved Ireland in the history of humanity, she was the ambassador. The most beautiful, love of her country. And I think because of that, because both my parents were so passionately Irish, and there's a symptom of living in America, being immigrants. Like, our life was more Irish than yours, I guarantee it, Ciara. You know what I mean? Like the All Ireland final, you'd have the two doors in the car, so the radio, because they could somehow get it on the radio and find some sort of frequency, and it'd be blaring through, and you'd have Tato and Lucasade that you had to go to shop to find, just and Irish people. I probably shouldn't go on record saying this, but a lot of Irish people living in your basement, and just a very, very, very Irish life. And so, yeah, my mom, but she was by far she had the yearning and the love of Ireland. I don't know what the last time she was here was. I actually should think about that. I'm not sure what the last time she was here, but I brought her Tato, which I know we're getting to later. But before she died, I brought her some grass. I'd taken some grass and put it into a bag. I brought her some Tato, and we listened to Horse Outside by the Rubber Bandits, which was her favorite thing ever. And we listened to that the night before she died. So there you go.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's lovely. So lovely. You're right about the Irish away from Ireland. People, and a few people have said that already in the podcast.
More Irish. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So I'm living in the UK the last 14
Yeah.
years, and never going to lose my
No.
accent, number one. And interestingly, so I've lived in London, Manchester, and Cardiff. People will be sick of me saying this, but people. So in Cardiff, we'll say people don't know the Irish history, or we kind of know that in general, about the history, but as in the history of women in
Mhm.
Ireland, you know, and because actually they have a different history with how women in Wales and women obviously in England and Scotland, wherever,
Mhm.
have been
Yeah.
treated. So sometimes I say things to people about it and they're like, really? We're really couldn't work? Or, when they got married, what? Like, there's a lot of not
Disbelief, yeah, of course, yeah. Yeah, and I think that when we get onto one of the next points to talk about, I think that's definitely something I want to talk about, because I think it has made us who we are in so many ways, and it's very important to remind people of that history.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you so much for that. And then your third
This one was really, I was thinking so much about this one because the others are so life defining, but actually, this one is important to me for a very specific reason. And that is when I was in college in Dublin, I did a work experience day in RTE on the arts show called Rattlebag, for those who might remember it, hosted by Miles Dungan. I was in college with Miles's daughter, and she had organized the work experience day. We went in, it was great. Got to meet him, got to see how the show worked and everything. And that was that. And then I went on to do what I had to do to pay rent. So I was working in record shops. I'm a very passionate music person, as anyone who knows me knows. And I worked in record shops for years. And he came in, it was Christmas time, around Christmas time, and he came in to buy some albums. And he saw me at the counter and he said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, I'm working. I got to, and he said, "Oh, come into me. Come into me next week." And I got an internship. Like he brought me into the fold right away. And I started working with them. And that is the start of that door, and that generosity of that opening of that door, which is the point that I wanted to make, was sort of, it has become a life's kind of mission for me, was he opened a door. He let a young girl in who was clearly very interested in the world that he worked in, but he opened that door for me. And when I was working there, one of the women I worked with said, "You wouldn't be interested in going back to New York to work, would you?" At one point, this is a year or 2 years later, and I said, "Yeah, maybe. What's the job?" And she said, "Oh, my cousin works for MTV, and he's looking for a producer." And my eyes, I thought, oh my God, the dream. And I was, not long after that, I was in Times Square in 1515 Broadway, working as a producer, and met the most, like, just went on to have the most incredible 10 years of my life in terms of my career. So that was the door. So from now on, for me, I always remember that we have the opportunity as people to open doors, and we have an obligation to do so. So that's been one of the best parts of my life and my career, is being able to try and open opportunities and doors for others.
yeah, that's amazing. And it was a man
Yeah.
that did that. And I think that's what, like, we've so many supportive men
Yeah.
in our lives. And and it's really important for them, hopefully they're all listening to this podcast,
Mhm.
but that actually they're really
Very
important,
much.
for success,
Mhm.
just on that, so, I've worked in the BBC for a
Hmm.
long time, and but it was an Irishman who got
Oh,
me to BBC World.
Wow.
Yeah, so his name is Morris Hartnett, and he's from Abbeyfield in Limerick, and he had been in the BBC since he was 16, and he'd been there, like, I don't know, 30 odd years.
Mhm.
He'd tell you himself, like, he was amazing because he got a lot of, well, not a lot, but he got Irish journalists into the BBC, and, well, gave them a chance anyway,
Hmm.
to freelance, see how you'd get on. And a number of us obviously, like, became friends and stuff. And I'm great friends with Morris now.
Oh,
And I don't know if Morris realizes ho- what an impact that decision
yeah.
that he gave me to enter into BBC World Television, and I'm still obviously with the BBC. Um, and it was a fellow Irish person, but
Mhm.
like, it's, yeah. So it's lovely, lovely, and that opened the door for my career in the beginning.
And that's it. And I think we have to be conscious of thinking about the fact that we have the ability to do that for others, and to give back that chance. But to your point, Ciara, oftentimes it is like men in different positions of power that can open doors and create different narratives and change things for women in that way. So, those allies, and those believers are really important. And it's funny, the producer of the show, Kevin Reynolds, like 20 years later, and I got an email from him about a year ago, checking in and saying hello. And like these connections that we make, especially in those early days of our career, are vital, and they go on and they live on. And I think it's just, we have to think about the people we meet along the way.
Exactly. Okay, so what comes to mind when you think of Manana hÉireann? Like, what does being Ban hÉireann, an Irish woman, mean to you?
So I guess the word that came out to me, and I'm not sure it's the right word, but it certainly is the word I thought of most, which is fear. It's like a fierceness. And I think it speaks to what you were talking about our history. And I think the thing that the best example for me would have been around the Repeal the Eighth campaign. I worked on that on a small level, but on a grassroots level, I worked on it. And when we as a collective, Irish women, get together and we believe something is wrong, I think we're immensely powerful. I think that fierceness, that outspokenness, that sense of when something is unjust and we need to use our voices. Our voices have global reach. They really do. They have global reach. Like when we get together, are an incredible force of nature. So I think we're very capable. I think because of our history and the history of colonization and different things, like we are able to speak out for people who are I'm trying to use the right words here, but I think we're very capable of being able to look for the injustices in the world and be able to say we see ourselves in that, we stand with people. And I think obviously examples of what is happening in Palestine and how we see a likeness in our histories and how we're willing to stand up and use our voice. And we're not scared. I think we're very brave. When I think of Irish women, I think of bravery. I also think of creativity and passion. I think about my sister is an artist. Her name's Aisling, so I can't get a more Irish name than that. Aisling Hamrogue, she's a painter living in New York. And I think about like poetry, music, art, like we're such a expressive, creative bunch of women. But a lot of it is bravery. And maybe some of that is sort of inherited through generations. And maybe some of it is because we had to be, and we've watched generations ahead of us. My grandmother was a business owner owning a shop built beside her house when many women weren't doing something like that, and running it herself. And, with all those children, those 14 children that she had, it was quite something to be able to do something like that. So lots of examples in my life of bravery. My mother was very brave and outspoken about speaking up for people who couldn't speak up for themselves. And that's sort of how I would define it. I think that's certainly how I would define it for myself. I think that mix, it's sort of hard to explain exactly what it is, but it's certainly like, it's so special.
It is. And then who are the Irish women you look up to?
Well, hands down, Sinead O'Connor it was everything to me. And now means more to me than she even did before. Probably true for a lot of us. I grew up with, Sinead O'Connor's tapes playing in my mother's car, and my mother singing Sinead O'Connor songs at the top of her lungs. She was basically like part of my blood. It's hard to explain. I mean, such an integral part of my childhood and my youth. And if you think about it, the music that she made and the sort of boldness of what she was doing as a young girl, 6, 7, 8, 9, listening to that kind of music left a huge imprint. I don't think I knew then what she was singing about. I probably didn't, but I knew whatever it was, she cared deeply about it. And it was raw. very raw. All of it was incredibly close to the bone, and that was quite clear. But I think now, looking at what she stood for, I remember watching Saturday Night Live the night that she ripped up the picture of the Pope, because I was living in America. It would have been on, and I remember watching it, and I remember it being such a topic of conversation, a controversial moment. And I remember myself even wishing she hadn't done it, thinking, oh, well, why did she do something so? Because I grew up Catholic, I grew up Christian, and it was only a few years later when you become more educated and you start to understand and you started to see that it all started to make sense. And now when I think about Sinead, I think a lot of times people who speak out, speakers of truth, are damned and are considered crazy and are called crazy. Women especially. And a lot of times they're judged, silenced, and Sinead was so brave that she wasn't listening. She was going to be true to herself and to her truth and to her beliefs, which turned out to, a lot of them, to, of course, be true, what she was speaking out against, even though she was told she was, crazy, became so I think she to me is the icon that lives forever in my heart. I have to say, when I was working in Rattlebeg, she came in for a special, so I got to meet her and spend an afternoon with her. So you can imagine, after all that history of loving her and then seeing her and having to act cool and normal, which I couldn't do, and she exceeded my expectations in every possible way. She brought her daughter in with her, and she was just a mother, like in the most beautiful way. She was a gentle, loving, considerate mother. She was funny, incredibly funny. She didn't make me feel nervous. She made me feel excited to be in her presence. And it was a dream come true, an absolute dream to get to meet her. So she, to me, is the Irish icon. And I sometimes think about her, Ciara, when I'm scared to tell the truth or scared to speak up about something that's not right. I think, what would Sinead do? I know some people think, what would Jesus do? I think, what would Sinead do? Because for me, she's like a good North Star about bravery. That's one answer. I would be remiss not to mention my friends, though. And I know that's probably a little bit, obvious, but truly, my friends are Irish women across the world who are, I look up to them in every possible way because I couldn't survive without them. They are my network. They are my text before bed, and they're the text in the morning. And how did you get on in your presentation? Did the kids sleep okay last night? What do they want for their birthday? Are you going crazy this week? Is it just me? These beautiful women who have such different traits that keep, like, this system, this network keeps us going. It keeps us alive, My best friend from Drogheda, like, she lives in London. We talk every day, just keeping each other going. My other best friend, Susie, lives in Dublin. Like, we'd go to war for each other at any given opportunity. So you've got people just across the world who are such fierce friends. Irish women love so passionately, and we love each other so passionately. So I feel very grateful to have such beautiful Irish women in my family.
Yeah, they are family, the WhatsApp notes. I'm just thinking of my friends, like, the WhatsApp notes from before. I don't know why we don't just talk to each other.
Yeah. But they're like little love notes, like my friend Cirque and I think kind of only, like, we talk all the time. We're really close, but like a lot of the times our signal to one another is like an Instagram DM of like a meme. And that's how we're just signaling across the universe. Like, I'm thinking of you. And it can be something as simple as that, my cousin in Sligo sending, that's sometimes, that's all we can do. It's all we can, the only energy we have is to sort of send an emoji before, and I think that's beautiful.
It is. It's a different way of communicating, but it's our way of communicating, and it's a nod to say, I'm thinking of you. Now, this is hilarious. This video is hilarious. Okay, and then the best advice you were given from.
Okay, so I'm going to get my email up for this one, if that's okay. because it's very specific and it came in an email. So I think it's an important one. I've read this one a few times in different situations in my life, but it comes on the 1st of February 2012. I'll try not to cry when I read it, but Dear Sash, I wanted to say goodnight and tell you don't worry about anything. Life has a way of working out in spite of us. Just be who you are, and who you want to become can be your goal, but for now, accept where and who and what you are. Don't make any apologies for being you. I love you. Talk to you mañana, Mommy. Yeah. So I've read that email many times, but I've also read it in really interesting circumstances. I've recently, last year, finished a really incredible leadership course, and we, at the end, had to read something important to us, and I got to read that to a room full of people. And it's funny how an email that she sent one night to her daughter, just sending a bit of reassurance across, in an email, became something so important to me. I don't even know at the time when she sent it that I would have known that, but it's such a beautiful thing to have.
That was really beautiful, and it's so lovely that you still have it. But do you know when your mum wrote?
So she wrote it in 2012. I don't remember what the circumstances, what was going on in my life when she wrote it, but I know that it was a couple of years before she passed. And, I have this is a mother's love. I have about 2,500 emails. That's real. I have about 2,500 emails from my mother. So I'm never short of advice, Ciara. If I can just search, I can just do a search on my Gmail. I can look up any topic and she'll have said something to me about something. But I mean, that's a mother's love. And that's a cool, like, digital archived, like, story of love. Because there was never something I told her the night before on the phone that she didn't go off and think about and then get back to me,
Yeah, she was making sure that you were happy and okay in Ireland. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so your favorite Irish word or saying, and the phrase can be in Irish.
So I have it in English, if that's okay. And for me, this is actually something that's become much more apparent in midlife. I'm trying to get used to saying midlife and not freaking out about it, but I guess that's what it is. It's that life is just wind and smoke. And it's an Irish saying, and I think it's something that I did not know until I reached midlife, that things change all the time. And getting comfortable with change is essential to survive and to be happy. And I think it's something that you grow so long and things don't change. And maybe the places you go and the friends you see and everything as you know it is still there. There's touchstones all around the world of who you were and who you used to be. But sometimes those things start to disappear. They start to change. Your priorities change. And as a woman in midlife, not to scare anybody who's not in midlife, but everything changes dramatically, really, physically, mentally, emotionally. Going through perimenopause is I know the word is popular, and it's popular for a reason, because we didn't study it or talk about it before, and now we are. It's a radical life shift, and there's perspective. And for me, the perspective is nothing stays the same. And that's not a bad thing. It can be fearful, it can feel scary, but actually, I think it's like a metamorphosis. It's changing into something else, and you change into something else. And for me, I'm pretty, I wouldn't want to sugarcoat it, but I'm excited about this person that I'm becoming. I think midlife allows you a chance to change. There's a ton of things that are incredibly difficult to get through with it. I think the workplace can be really hard going through perimenopause, fighting brain fog, fatigue, anxiety, being up at night. That's really challenging. It can be challenging to be a mom under those circumstances. You're tired, you're physically going through things that are like hard to put into words. but you're also starting to build a new lens, and that new lens can see the world in a different way. And I think I'm personally quite excited about it. So life is just wind and smoke for me is a really nice way of saying, like, it's moving, it's changing, it's evolving, and we don't know what's coming next, but isn't that pretty exciting too?
Yeah, it is exciting. I've never heard of like this,
Yeah. It's nice, isn't it?
of course. Yeah, it's lovely. It's lovely. Thank you for that. Okay, quick fire round at the end. Tato or king?
This is such a political thing you've done here with these questions. My goodness. Okay, Tato by far, like not even a question. I don't know who's eating the King Crisp. Sorry, King Crisps, but Tato every day, all day. I grew up with them. I couldn't imagine anything other than that. It's Tato for me.
Lion's tea or Barry's tea?
Oh God, again. Anyway, this one I can give you, like, Barry's would have been growing up, you drink Barry's tea in our house, but as a full-on traitor, I have moved to the Lion's tea camp. I'm sorry to everybody about it, but I have. I don't know if it was from living in Dublin for so long, and I feel like a lot of my friends in Dublin drink Lion's tea. I'm not opposed to a cup of Barry's tea, but at a pinch, I'm going to pick Lion's.
Lions will be definitely happy because most people have said Barry's. So
there you go. We'll let them know. Let's send it to them right away.
How many cups of tea do you?
I love it. So specific. 2, a max 2, but the first one is heaven.
That's it, Sasha. Sasha Hamrogue, thank you so much for coming on the Manana HÉireann podcast.
Thank you, Ciara. It was great to be here.